The framers of Section 3 knew from painful experience that those who had violently broken their oaths to the Constitution couldn't be trusted to hold power again because they could dismantle our constitutional democracy from within. The reason we're here is that President Trump tried to disenfranchise 80 million Americans who voted against him, and the Constitution doesn't require that he be given another chance.
Now, this issue of disenfranchisement came up in particular because Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who was appointed by former President Trump, was asking whether or not Colorado was going to be disenfranchising its voters by not putting Trump on the ballot. We also, though, heard from a liberal justice, Alega Kagan, who was saying, well, why should one state decide who's the president of the United States? So while we don't know exactly what the court is going to do, they did seem to be leaning against Colorado.
Isn't it interesting to watch the liberal mind just cling to whatever the current get Trump fantasy is? They're just trying to will it across the finish line. And we get to see it all in real time. She just said, we just don't know how it's going to go. Yes, yes. Anyone who watched that, anyone who knows the law, anyone who has been talking about this for as long as we have, knows exactly how this is going to go. It's going to be a 9-0 unanimous smackdown and protection of the United States Constitution. But let's enjoy just a little bit more.
So, I've watched over 400 Supreme Court arguments. I've done 50 myself. I would tell you this argument did not go well for the Trump challengers, and that's to put it mildly. I probably have some other adjectives that I won't say on air. In the thing that I was watching for was any indication anywhere about just how dangerous a ruling to overturn the Colorado Supreme Court was. We heard a lot from the court, particularly the Chief Justice, Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Alito, about how if you affirm the Colorado decision, it'll empower states to mess with federal elections.
Yeah, so that poor guy is not happy. And, this is exactly why I tell our liberal friends in the comments, in the chat, please, guys, prepare your minds. We all should prepare our minds for the eventuality that things just don't go our way. This is one of those things. It's not going to go your way. The November election, that's likely to be another thing that doesn't go your way. Every Trump case, every get Trump case is probably going to be one of those things also. It's not going to go your way. And really, the moral of the story is everyone should prepare their minds. That said, the liberal mind is remarkable. It truly does have an amazing self-protection mechanism. And we see it playing out right now with the classified documents case. Somehow certain people just didn't hear the part about President Biden being so sad and feeble-minded that a jury wouldn't dare convict him. Instead, they heard he's innocent and he didn't do anything wrong and he's doing a tremendous job. It is truly, truly insane. It's almost indescribable. But anyway, so Colorado's trip to the Supreme Court did not go like it was planned, to say it mildly. It went very, very poorly. It went so poorly that even the bought and paid for leftists in the media had to admit this is probably going to be a 9-0 unanimous decision, which is exactly what every single thinking person has been trying to explain to them since the court decided to take this case. And if you look at it objectively, for any liberals that are able to do that, it really is the simplest concept possible. You can't just say a thing was an insurrection, especially when in the 3 years since it happened, whatever it was, not one person has been charged with it. The Department of Justice has never, ever alleged in any of its filings that it was anything more than a riot. And anyone looking at that objectively would recognize that the only person on the entirety of planet Earth that they would ever do this to is Donald John Trump. That is it. Anyone objective can recognize that. And all this exercise was the clearest example yet, I think, the clearest example yet of what Trump derangement syndrome really can do to you. And guys, it is not good.
States have created under their Article 1 and Article 2 powers to run elections.
But it would seem that particularly after Reconstruction and after the Compromise of 1877 and during the period of Redeemers, that you would have that kind of conflict. There were a plethora of Confederates still around. There were any number of people who would continue to either run for state offices or national offices. So it would seem that would suggest that there would at least be a few examples of national candidates being disqualified, if your reading is correct.
Well, there were certainly national candidates who were disqualified by Congress refusing to seat them.
I understand that, but that's not this case. Did states disqualify them? That's what we're talking about here. I understand Congress would not seat them.
Other than the example I gave, no. But again, Your Honor, that's not surprising because there wouldn't have been – states certainly wouldn't have the authority to remove a sitting
So what's the
federal
purpose
officer.
of the – what was the purpose of the of Section 3? The states were sending people. The concern was that the former Confederate states would continue being bad actors. And the effort was to prevent them from doing this. And you're saying that, well, this also authorized states to disqualify candidates. So what I'm asking you for, if you are right, what are the examples?
Well, Your Honor, the examples are states excluded many candidates for state office, individuals holding state offices. We have a number of published cases of states considering that.
I understand the states controlling state elections and state positions. What we are talking about here are national candidates.
Poor Jason Murray, man. It's not going well, right? But that's to be expected, of course. I mean, that's Clarence Thomas he's talking to. But what about the liberals? And not just the liberals, but the really, really liberals. The ones that, can't even define woman type liberal.
The more broad point I want to make is that what is very clear from the history is that the framers were concerned about charismatic rebels who might rise through the ranks up to and including the presidency of the United States.
But then why didn't they put the word president in the very enumerated list in Section 3? The thing that really is troubling to me is I totally understand your argument, but they were listing people that were barred, and president is not there. And so I guess that just makes me worry that maybe they weren't focusing on the president and, for example, the fact that electors of vice president and president are there suggests that really what they thought was if we're worried about the charismatic person, we're going to bar insurrectionist electors, and therefore that person is never going to rise.
This came up in the debates in Congress over Section 3, where Reverdy Johnson said, why haven't you included president and vice president in the language? And Senator Morrill responds, we have. Look at the language, any office under the United States.
Yes, but doesn't that at least suggest ambiguity? And this sort of ties into Justice Kavanaugh's point. In other words, we had a person right there at the time saying what I'm saying. The language here doesn't seem to include president. Why is that? And so if there's an ambiguity, why would we construe it to, as Justice Kavanaugh pointed out, against democracy?
Yeah, so even Ketanji Brown, and I don't mean to say that I don't mean that disrespectfully. What I mean is, if I was going to pick, before I heard the arguments, which justice would side with Colorado, it would probably be Justice Brown. And even she doesn't seem to be able to get on board with Colorado. And actually, she probably had the best argument of the entire day. She says, if it really is as ambiguous as you say, then why would we decide against democracy? And that's really, really a fantastic question. And poor Jason, poor Colorado, and really, poor liberals, man. I understand that they've done this all to themselves. They really do believe somehow that the only way to save democracy is to suspend and destroy democratic principles, but only this once, and only for this guy. And they believe that, but it's pretty amazing stuff. I mean, the interesting thing, I think, will be the average liberal's reaction to this 9-0 decision that is coming. I have a feeling, my gut tells me the corporate media will almost ignore it. They'll report it, but they won't try to gaslight too hard because they recognize the kind of mental gymnastics that will require. But I think the average liberal, the people that really, really, truly do believe, the true believers of what they're told, I think they're going to twist their poor, neglected brains into some pretty impressive shapes, but we'll see. That's just my take, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't already, be a part of the channel's growth, man. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.